Hi and welcome back to our channel. Recently I got a few PS5 which was in other service before, and so I wanted to make a video where actually I explain how we do the HDMI replacement and why we do this way. Okay, so it's not necessary step, but if you take the new connector, put some flux on it and put some solder on it, it's gonna be much easier to connect it. And there's less chance you have a cold soldering and it's gonna rip off at the first test. It's not a perfect solution, so don't think it's gonna make every replacement perfect, but it's gonna increase your chance. When the solder is stocking on the pin, just take some extra flux, and after it's gonna will spread nicely and not gonna connect the pin. Don't use more than 350 Celsius on the solder iron. It could be less. 300 is enough, be honest. It depends from the solder. But if you're using more, then you're gonna melt the plastic which is holding the pins and you're gonna have issues. Alright, so 300 Celsius usually it's enough. Don't use a small tip, use a little bit wider one. Okay, when we get to the removal process. Now, I have seen some crazy stuff. Some of them was burned to hell with a heat gun. Not a good idea. Some of them tried to take it off with a 20-pound rework station from Amazon. Not gonna work. Okay, try to use a proper equipment. It doesn't have to be really expensive. Ours is a little bit more, this quick one is a little bit more expensive, but around £100 you can get a proper one. And there's less chance actually you burn your hand. It's gonna work after 20 desoldering process, and it's just gonna work. It actually can deliver that heat. In this case it's 500 Celsius and at least 100 liter. Many times I'm using 130 liter per minute. This depends, basically. Summertime we don't need that much, but in cold winter I'm not heating that part of the shop. It's a little bit cold. It's okay. It's UK. It's really expensive to heat here in this shop. So in that case I'm using a little bit more airflow, at least it's keep me warm as well. Alright, now don't rip the HDMI port. So I have seen when they rip off the traces, you heat up, you can see when the flux starts bubbling, you tiny bit move the port. If it's moving freely, you can give an extra 20 seconds, not a problem. If it's moving freely, then you can take it off, okay? Because when you rip the traces, it's gonna be extra work, it's gonna be extra charge for us. You know, if I have to work more, I'm gonna charge more. Alright. So it's come off, you still keep warm the port, and you just place the new one. You try to push a little bit on inside the port and down. You see it's pushing on the back, holding down, a little extra heat, and we let it cooling down until the solder is cooled down and it's gonna hold itself. Okay, now it's a little bit messy, so you can't see the pins. So we have to clean it up. And actually its count is what kind of flux you used. I'm using a no clean flux, which means not necessary to have to be cleaned, but to be honest, I'm just using because I love this cleaning, but it's much easier to clean. So a little isopropyl alcohol, a toothbrush, whatever brush you get off. For this job, I'm using the cheapest brush what is available. It's doing the job, and after I can throw it out when it's too much flux on it, because after it's gonna be like made from metal brush. Alright, so nice and clean. Now we're gonna check the pins, because sometimes if you're not pushing down on the back, then one of the side or both of the side is not gonna stick on it. So try to, it's just double check, you know, before you put it together and test, just to take a quick look. Alright. It's much easier if you have a good microscope. I am very lucky. I bought this one from AliExpress a couple of years ago. Amazingly, it's doing the job day and night. I basically never turned off. I leave the station there, it's always powered, and it's still working. I love it. Alright, so pins. You're just using a nice tip, and yeah, just push it sideways. If the soldering is not perfect, it's gonna move. Alright, everything is there. Now it's worth a shot to check the bottom side. Is the solder is properly, it's not cracked around the holder, the HDMI port holder. Oh, before you ask why I'm using a 2 kilogram weight, because in this case the main board is not gonna move. Obviously I can't do this on the desk, so it's coming out a little bit. So I'm just double checking the port. If you heat it for too long time, then the middle of the port, it will be melted, it's not going to be straight, and it's not going to make a good connection. Now in this case, we also have a little problem with the USB port, but the customer requested not to replace that one, so I'm not bothering with that one at the moment, but yeah, it's there. But we need a record, because if it's later an issue, then, you know, we can tell we told you so. Now, just because it was looking perfect, it doesn't mean it's worked. It's worked for the test. So when I just put together the thing just to hook it up, you know, but not even the fan was inside, not even the drive or anything. I just wanted to see if I can see a picture. It was perfect. I put it together. The customer arrived because he really wanted to play. I told him 5 minutes, I just want to run one more test before I put it together. And the test failed. As soon as I moved a tiny bit the cable, it didn't hold. So even when it's looking perfect, it doesn't mean anything. It still could be an issue. So in this case, I had to replace again. And that's okay. This is what you do if it's not perfect. And we do it again. By the way, this replacement held it nicely, so it was no further issues. But things happening even if you do everything by the book. Don't worry about it. That's part of the job, yeah? Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video. And good luck with your PS5. And please check the liquid metal. So you don't want to leave it dry, don't let it any dry spot. And with the very old one, check the putty on the memories as that has the chips as well, because now they end the time when they just dry out completely. All right, give us a like, please, subscribe, you know, the usual stuff. See you next time.